Hey, you guys, it is William calling from Movie Blogs.
It's Freddie.
And yeah, we have to talk about booing. Booing was a huge, big theme this year at Eurovision. Are you ready?
Let's do this. Let's do this.
So the broadcast of Eurovision 2024 was incredibly controversial this year, and part of the controversy stems from the booing of the Israeli contestant Eden Golan. Now, those of us on the ground, in rehearsals, in the arena, we heard the booing very clearly. People at home, they didn't hear it as clearly because fake applause was pumped over that. Now, the Dutch broadcaster actually released a statement expressing their disappointment. Freddie, would you like to share that?
Yeah, AVROTROS said, we believe that when a musician performs, you should always show what it does to the audience. They say they essentially created a false impression of it and you're distorting kind of genuine reactions.
Yeah, and this was actually echoed in Portugal. The director, Nicolau Santos, of the board of directors of RTP, commented on this anti-booing system, and this is what he had to say.
For an organisation like the EBU and for an organisation like RTP and the European Public Media Service, whose flag is the fight against fake news, misinformation and information manipulation, it is unacceptable that this is possible. Using this method distorts reality.
So it's a very interesting point. The EBU is, of course, made up of public service broadcasters. They're against fake news. They're against distorting the truth, as you just said.
And they regulate kind of news organizations across Europe. So all of the public broadcasters that are in the EBU have to kind of abide by rules of neutrality and misinformation and essentially not become mouthpieces.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Eurovision itself is not a news program, so some might say this is an entertainment product, and therefore you could hide the booing. However, what they've just said is no. This is kind of going against our values. Where do you sit on this, Freddie? Should booing be allowed? If booing takes place, should it be covered up?
Yeah, I don't approve of the booing, but I don't think you should necessarily be covering up what the audience is saying. I think... what's the point in even having an audience if you're just going to fake their kind of noises anyway, And so I just think it's unfair. I just wish we weren't ever in a situation where it would lead to an audience feeling the need to voice an opinion in that way.
Yeah, and going back to the Dutch point, actually, they talk about wanting to hear the genuine reactions of the crowd. Like in a competition setting, I think the audience can sort of impact how viewers vote. Like you can tell, frankly, if one act gets more applause than others. Like for instance, during Baby Lasagna, you heard the audience cheering along when he was doing that. And so that would have come through the TV and people feel more motivated to vote. And so, if we're concerned about a fair competition, to the Dutch point, maybe you should show how the audience is reacting.
And also, equally in the same way, if someone's getting booed, it could make an audience more sympathetic. I mean, I don't think it's worth covering up. I think it's just stupid. Where does it stop? Who's to say in the future they don't start piping in other noises or chanting?
Yeah.
It sets a really dangerous precedent. I don't necessarily believe that the EBU would do that, but it kind of opens the doors for anyone who's producing this type of programming to see it as a norm.
It's really interesting, and it sets a precedent. I mean, obviously, we did have anti-booing technology back in 2014, 2015. I believe Polina Gagarina from Russia was booed. The Tomachevi sisters were booed. The Danish broadcaster in 2014 definitely said they used anti-booing technology, but it still came through the TV. And, they argue this is to protect the artist, but the fact is, the artist has already felt the impact in the arena by people booing, because you can't control people booing. So I don't know if you're actually, the anti-booing technology is protecting the artist.
Yeah, in essence, I actually think people started booing louder on purpose because they knew this technology was there. It created an even worse atmosphere. I mean, it was widely publicized before that this anti-booing technology was going to be there. And so I think audiences went in, if they had the intention to boo Israel, then they did that with more gusto, as it were. And also, why was that filter when they went to Martin Österdahl?
This is really interesting, right? So Martin Österdahl was booed. I'm assuming part of this, or much of this, was down to Joost Klein being disqualified.
Yeah.
But maybe it also related to Israel's participation. It's unclear what was motivating their booing. I certainly know some of my Dutch friends were booing because of Joost Klein being disqualified, but they didn't dampen it. The EBU left that in. Do you think technically they couldn't remove it? Do you think there was less, or maybe it's this, maybe there was just less applause? Because you're not going to applaud Martin Österdahl passionately, whereas Israel's fans were applauding passionately. And so...
Yeah, I do wonder also whether it was something to do with maybe the technology was only switched on for the musical performances. Because actually I remember watching the dress rehearsal feeds and you were getting fake cheers only through the... I think I was actually listening to Joost Klein's dress rehearsal and they were piping in cheers. Just as for the semi-final. So I know it was going on through the whole thing, but I guess they just thought they didn't need it for the kind of speech bits.
Yeah. Maybe there was less booing for Martin, but there was also less applause, so you hear the booing more.
Oh, there was a lot of booing.
There was a lot of booing.
Yeah.
I had left the arena at that point. It's a big mess is the point.
It was the first time you heard it clearly on the television output, the booing.
Yeah.
It was mad.
And his face, I mean, he definitely heard it.
Oh my God. We're going to check the result for the grand final result. Yeah, he was freaking out. But I mean, it says a lot when, you know, the acts the audience who only seem to care about the contestants start booing the man in the suit in the corner, you know, but people don't necessarily pay attention to them normally.
No, passions were running so high this year.
Martin Österdahl may not necessarily have been booed regarding Netherlands had people not already been in position booing the other acts. You know what I mean? It kind of set a precedent for the whole evening, and people were in that mood. I remember actually on the Friday before the jury performance, I think WeBlogs actually tweeted it, that one of the MCs came on stage before to kind of amp up the audience, give a talk about not being kind to contestants, essentially. But before that, he'd said that Joost Klein was not going to perform, so it just kicked off the audience booing. And then the next thing he said, literally 5 seconds after, whilst the audience was still booing, was to be kind to the other acts. So it just made everything so... I just never want to go back there. It was basically just the most tense atmosphere in the world.
Yeah, I actually filmed that clip. So.
I don't recognize this. I've been doing Eurovision for many years. And the Eurovision tribe is not hateful people. We're a loving people.
But that night, you know, passions ran high, and you're absolutely right. The booing started early, carried on with Israel, ended up with Martin coming through most clearly on the TV. So just a night of negativity.
Absolutely. And that is not what Eurovision is about.
No, and I think the takeaway from this, from the Portuguese and the Dutch comments, is that the EBU is going to be forced in a position to address whether anti-booing technology is allowed moving forward, whether, you know, it should reflect reality, the audience should hear the booing, you know, that creates a more level playing field competitively because it reflects reality, or if they should be allowed to treat this as an entertainment event like a sitcom, you know, a dramedy, and pump in fake laughing. But, you know, I never like laugh tracks. So I don't think we need applause tracks either.
No, the whole thing was just weird and dystopian, really. That's my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. It says us sitting in this box, you know, staring at a screen, talking about booing. What is the future? What is life? In any case, that's what we think. What do you think? Do you side with the Netherlands and Portugal on this question of should anti-booing technology be allowed? Let us know here on WeBlogs.
Yes, you can. What do I say again?
They can follow. They can follow. You do you, babe.
You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Pinterest.
Oh, God, not a bloody Pinterest.
Just hit the subscribe button. That's all we really care about.
We'll see you later.
Bye.